so the list is called the 6 distinct emphases of Triratna. So Triratna is the movement, the order of the community that this center is a part of, right? And so ecumenical is a word that's we usually hear from in sort of Christian context usually, or generally in religious contexts. And the first thing that comes to mind is that it's quite an important point that's important to us because of the fact that because what Lalitaratna has just been explaining, because of all the things we sort of have in common with other Buddhist schools, and that is because one thing that Sangharakshita tried to do when he set up this movement was to say, okay, well, what is sort of the basics of Buddhism, right? So we've got all these different Buddhist schools that developed over thousands and thousands of years. You've got the Southeast Asian Theravada tradition. You've got, in China and Japan, you've got the sort of Mahayana tradition. You've got the Tibetan tradition. But all sorts of, and then you've got all these traditions that have gone lost through time as well. And if you look at the face of those traditions, you can sometimes feel like, well, is that still the same religion? Is that still the same thing? I had the experience when I went to Japan for a year, and that's kind of the place where I got interested in Buddhism. So I studied Japanese there after I graduated from high school. And the Japanese, they have 13 different versions of Buddhism just in their one country, right? They have, and on the outlook of it looks very, very different, right? One school teaches, well, you just have to believe in a certain Buddha and he will save you. The other ones are saying, no, don't even rely on a Buddha, just meditate yourself. And so you get all these different kind of emphases. And what Sangharakshita tried to do is he tried to say, well, if Buddhism, what is Buddhism? What's the very basic of Buddhism? And in order to do that, he said, well, in order to do that, we need to actually really appreciate the whole tradition of Buddhism. So this is what ecumenical means here, is that we take inspiration from the whole tradition of Buddhism. Yeah, we're not just saying, okay, we're that, or we only follow those kind of scriptures, or we only follow those kind of teachings. In order to figure out what the basis, what basic Buddhism is, we need to look at the whole of the Buddhist tradition. So this is what Sangharakshita has done. He's been ordained as a Theravada monk. He had Tibetan teachers. He had a Chinese teacher. So he studied that whole kind of variety of Buddhism and what it had to offer. He read all those books by scholars, and only then you can kind of see, this seems to be, what Buddhism is about in the end, and we can derive inspiration from it. So, for example, we were meditating. We used the Metta Bhavana this morning, right? We meditated together. That comes from a very early tradition, so that the Theravadas are still. Are they still teaching it? But they used to teach it anyway.
It's sort of disappeared a lot.
Disappeared a bit, hasn't it?
They're all mindfulness of breathing,
Yeah. But it comes from sources from their tradition, from their school.
Yeah.
We recite certain texts like the puja. So on Friday nights, if you come on a Friday night class, we recite a puja. Anyway, those words come from Sangharakshita, but sometimes we chant a puja that comes from the Mahayana tradition, right? We chant mantras that come from the Tibetan tradition usually. Yeah. So this is kind of what ecumenical approach means: is that we don't see ourselves as yet another sort of sect of Buddhism that we wanted to add on to the many sects that are already there. We actually want to look at what is Buddhism in its fullness. Yeah. That's how I.
Very good. Yeah. And I was with the dictionary looking up ecumenical and eclectic.
Oh yeah.
Eclectic. And eclectic is like you bring in all bits from other religions, but the philosophies might not be the same. Yeah? Mm. Whereas ecumenical, there is a central principle, so it does hold together. Yeah. Very good. And also, I mean, there are some bits in other schools of Buddhism which would just be useless to us here. If we were going on our arms round every morning around Berlin with a begging bowl, at 6 a.m, in the middle of winter, it just doesn't work, and that is absolutely important. Central to the Theravadas, The robes and all that, it's central. for us, I mean, Sangharakshita, when he came to England, he brought the robes, didn't he? He wore robes at first, but after a while his hair got longer. He stopped shaving his head, and he looked a bit more like a hippie. He's dead now, I can say that. He didn't like it when people said that.
All right.
But yeah, no. But there we are, yeah. So it's finding out what really works for us. Yeah.
I think for me the element there is one of great gratitude towards the whole tradition in a way, and a sort of sense of reverence and kind of how I understand this point is that we just say, well, you know, there's all these kind of geniuses throughout Buddhist history. You know, they have been in a very similar position like we have, you know, trying to establish a Buddhist culture where there hasn't been one. So you've got all these Japanese or Chinese masters, Tibetan masters, trying to figure out how can Buddhism look like in a culture that didn't have Buddhism before. And they have got something to say, and we've got something to learn from them.
And the point has been made, the unusual thing about today is that we have access to all the history of all these Buddhist schools. And this never existed until recently, So each school would say, no, we're the real ones, you know, we're the real ones. But Sangharakshita has come along later, and with access to all of the different schools now, it's you know, it's just universal. You can read any school, and basically he says they all work. You know, Theravada works, you know, Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana. But funnily enough, a personal thing here, people associate me with the Theravada, though I'm in our order.
Oh, really?
I just love the Pali Canon. You know, the really early stuff from 2,500 years ago. It's so clear. I like that. So that's my bent, my bias.
But you're not just...
No.
It's very devotional as well.
Very devotional. Lovely, thank you. But great. You're free to ask any questions at any point if you want, if there's anything bugging you, but don't worry if it's, you know, it's not that. So, shall we move on? Yeah? Yeah? And you were sort of, you know, in a way you were implying it, we're looking for what sort of unifies us. And Sangharakshita, he did this as a mental exercise himself. He wondered, what do all the Buddhist schools have in common? What do they really have in common? And really, it's quite obvious. The Buddha. The Buddha is there, otherwise it's not Buddhism, There's teachings, which we call the Dharma, that's there. And there's the spiritual fellowship, the Sangha. So these three jewels, they pop up in all the schools, but they're not emphasized. You know, they may not notice that actually, we have these characteristics. They haven't been told yet, you know. And Sangharakshita, he said, what have they all got in common? And he said, all the Buddhists go for refuge to the three jewels. I really didn't like this expression, going for refuge, you know. But it's a translation of the Pali words. Saranang gacchami, isn't it? Saranang, refuge, gacchami, I go, or something, is it? Have I got it right way
so
around?
Saranagamana is going for refuge, and then Sarana is the refuge, and gacchami is I go.
I go.
God,
I had it right.
This is why in the English translation they put the I go to the Buddha for refuge, I go.
Right.
It's not grammatically correct, is it?
I don't.
But
it's a bit German, isn't it?
Yes.
To have the verb at the end of the sentence.
But that's because in the Pali it's at the end.
All right.
Anyway.
So we saw this, but I just this sort of clunky word, refuge. It's not a fashionable word with like refugees and a women's refuge and things like that. But it is like, you know, it's basically saying, what is a safe place? What is a safe place? Everything's on the move. Everything's changing. It all ends in death. Yeah, that's a nice cheery note, isn't it? You know, it all comes to an end. And so you're saying, well, is there a safe place anywhere? You know, and the Buddha had this question as a young man before he was the Buddha. You know, he was looking around, he saw illness, he saw old age, he saw death. He says, this is awful. Is there an alternative? And through his practice, he got enlightened and said, yes, there is. It is possible to find something outside of death, outside of time, you know, and which is good. And this, he called it like a safe place to go. Any place, don't be literal, you know, where is enlightenment. But to take these as the central theme of your life, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and to try and discover them is going for refuge to the three jewels. Yeah? And he found that this was present in all Buddhist schools, though they weren't conscious of it, many of them.
One of those things that seems obvious, you know, is, or when you've read a bit about Buddhism, because if you like, I don't know, my first book was Buddhism for Dummies.
Excellent, good book. Yeah.
and they talk about the three jewels as well, because, you know, they all talk about it. But then if you actually study certain Buddhist teachings, then it's not, or like schools, it's actually not so emphasized. So the Tibetans make very little out of the three jewels. It's kind of a preliminary practice, so for you to then go on to other higher practices or whatever, and just that. But it's just that it was actually not so straightforward for Sangharakshita as well to figure that out. He at first thought that something else was the unifying factor of Buddhism, was the Bodhisattva ideal. He thought was the first, like a sort of altruistic dimension, he thought, though, to put it very simply. But then later on he thought, oh, actually it is just, well, being a Buddhist is the central unifying factor of Buddhism.
Very good.
But it's very profound because it's because it just comes back to this image of, you know, in one of the early scriptures, there's this lovely phrase, you know, other people go for refuge to, you know, what's it like, shrines or sacred places, sacred forests.
In times of flood, they go for refuge to higher ground, don't they? Yeah. Good sense, yeah.
So this is the image, right? That we all go for refuge somewhere. We seek refuge for some sort of things. And this is obviously a very Indian environment where he talks about, you know, shrines and, I don't know, sacred trees or whatever. This is where they go for refuge. That's what they pray to. That's where they put their security in life into. And he says, you know, but the real refuge are the three jewels, is a higher ideal represented by the Buddha. It's the path towards something like that, and is the community that tries to bring about this ideal. Yeah.
If you want to destroy a sexual relationship, go for refuge to your partner. Bore them to death. You know, you're wonderful. So we'll move on to the next one in a moment. Okay. But just this word refuge, I couldn't get on with it. I couldn't get on with this word refuge. And then one day I was just looking up the word refuge in an ordinary English dictionary, and the traffic island in the middle of the road is technically called a refuge. You know, Verkehrsinsel, yeah? You know, in German, yeah? It's technically called a refuge, you know, in the books. And that works for me. When I've got to cross 6 lanes of traffic, you know, I like that there's a traffic island in the middle, and I will go for refuge to it. It is a refuge. So the traffic island really saved the word for me, you know. And I remember a dear friend of mine, he was having problems with his spiritual life, and one of his dreams, he said there was this traffic island full of Tibetan monks. He says, what does that represent? I said, they've gone for refuge. So it's just a dream image. But I like that. So listen, I'm going to hand it back to you. A unified order, number 3.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, the other one.
You got the difficult one, sorry.
Unified order. Well...
You can read the first one if you want.
No, I did get that. Okay, so the first thing that comes to mind is that one of the things that Sangharakshita encountered when he was in India, so he lived in India for, I think, 20 years, before he came back to England to set up Triratna, then called the Western Buddhist Order. And one thing that he was quite clear about is that the order or the movement that he's going to found is supposed to be a unified one. So the third emphasis is a unified order. Now that sounds really nice, but it's not so straightforward. Or it's not so. We can't take that for granted in the whole Buddhist tradition. So I know, for example, first of all, traditionally, the Sangha, the community of Buddhists, is always divided, right? It's divided by a gender, for example. So there's always a women's order and a male order, an order for men and an order for women. You don't get any order that is for both genders, or for any gender. And there's also a distinction between, well, are you monastic or are you a layperson? So basically, you've got this sort of fourfold sangha in traditional Buddhism. Monks, nuns, laywomen, laymen. And then sometimes they add like intermediate stages as well, so that it becomes a sevenfold one. But anyway, so the divisions are getting more and more and more and more. So Sangharakshita said, well, he would like Triratna to be a unified order in that, people of any gender join the same order, people of any kind of nationality join the same order. That's also a degeneration in the in some Buddhist schools that only Sinhalese people can join this order, only that sort of nationality can join that order. They're quite, especially when Buddhism comes caught up in nationalism, then they're quite keen on purity of nationality within their order. So this is something that we're not doing. We've got people of all genders, sexualities, ethnicities, nationalities in our order. That's why it's called unified, right? Because the way to join the order is by going for refuge. This is the only thing that determines whether you're going to become an order member or not, is whether you go for refuge or not.
Going back 40 years, it wasn't so easy to be gay.
Oh, yeah.
And we used to have gay retreats, which was a great relief to a lot of people. I remember black women's retreats as well.
Yeah.
It just made it easier for them. Yeah, these have sort of disappeared now. I think it's all got a lot easier in the.
There's people of colour retreats now in England, I think.
Yeah, they're still there. Yeah.
And gay retreats. I've been invited to a few, but
have you?
I don't want to go.
I remember one gay retreat, and all these queens turned up with all their frocks. It was absolutely outrageous. The poor retreat centre didn't stand a chance. I went camping around the place. But anyway, there we are. But just to say, I was at Bodh Gaya about 10 years ago, where the Buddha got enlightened, and I found it upsetting that the women didn't really have a place. I never saw the nuns on their own, or lay women on their own. And when the women arrived, they'd get off a bus from whatever countries they came from, I don't know, Japan, Sri Lanka, whatever. But there'd always be a man leading them, like a load of ducklings around the place, And what was disturbing was that when these women sat to meditate, they were really meditating. You could walk past and their faces were in total heaven. They really were doing it beyond anybody. It was amazing. So it felt a bit unfair. And then we were there, 600 of us, men, women, Indians, all this, every lifestyle. And the person leading our chanting was Karuna Mai, a woman. She was leading the chanting for 600 of us, and the Tibetan monks going, woo. You can see the Buddhist world was a bit shocked by having a woman leading all of us, and that is quite revolutionary.
Yeah, it's quite radical actually in the Buddhist world.
So that's the unified.
I think that's the unified order.
That's the unified order. Yeah, it all, your background.
It's also it's unified by going for refuge and nothing else in a way.
Yeah. Great. Any questions on that? Because it's probably one of the most controversial. No? Good. All right, my turn.
Yeah.
The importance of friendship. Yes. Friendship. It just makes life amazing. Yeah. A really good friendship. It can turn hell into heaven. If you can have a sort of perfect circumstances, but with no friends, it's awful. Friendship is the blood of everything. Good friendship, And so I'll just throw out this idea as well, and you can join in with this one. But Sangharakshita, he had the idea of horizontal and vertical friendship. Now I'm going to throw that to the room. I'll ask you the question. What could he mean by horizontal and vertical friendship? Maybe give me one of them. Have a guess. Who thinks what?
Vertical master pupil.
Yes, excellent.
Horizontal colleagues.
That's perfect. So you did them both. Yeah. So vertical is like a more experienced person and a less experienced person. You could say master and disciple, yeah? But it could just be two people who are maybe a few years apart, or one of them is more spiritually mature. So that's a vertical friendship, yeah? And then the horizontal, they're like peers, they're mates, they're comrades. They came along at the same time. I'm delighted by three friends of mine. They worked together, I was going to mention this later, they worked together in our Right Livelihood business years ago in South London, in Croydon. They worked in the restaurant. Then they formed a Bee Gees tribute band, you know. And it's pretty good. They call themselves the Wookiees, yeah. And now all three of them have arrived, even though there's a largely Irish element in these, you know, Sugaba and Diampati, pure Irish blood. And they're, you know, Sugaba now speaks Spanish, and they're really running the Barcelona centre, you know. And they're friends, but they're like horizontal friends, you know, they're three mates, yeah. So fantastic, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Dharmasara was in Japan, so in Japan you use a different language whenever you are in a vertical relation or in a horizontal relation.
Yeah. I mean, there's all these honorifics, which is highly complex, where you talk about, there's all these, polite language, exactly,
And Sangha actually, the sort of revolution, I mean, was having the horizontal friendships that so many Buddhist movements, it's all guru and disciple. Everybody looks to the guru, but they don't make friends with each other. Yeah? So I'd like to ask you, all right, what are the dangers? Let's start with the easy one. What's the dangers of just horizontal friendship? There's no more spiritually mature person there, like in Barcelona. What's the danger? You end up forming a tribute band to the Bee Gees. But what could be the danger if you're all on a par, you're all equal? Have a guess, anybody. Have a guess. What could be a danger there?
Groupthink.
Group. It could be groupy, couldn't it? It could be groupy. Yeah. There's a bit more. Yes. So it's not really got a push. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else?
Furthering yourself spiritually.
Yeah. I do imagine that with the horizontal friendship, there's a bit of a pull.
Vertical.
The vertical. Thank you. The hands were right, but the mouth was wrong. Yeah. Sorry. Got that on video. Yeah. But with the vertical, there's a bit of a pull. There's a bit of a pull from the more spiritual experience. It's what I found interesting is, the junior partner feels this sort of pull to be a little bit better, on better behaviour because the guru's around. But I discovered something else. The guru is sometimes on better behaviour because the disciples are around. They've got to get their act together, yeah? So there's a bit of stress there, and it's a helpful stress. It's quite useful. If anything, you can use anything if it pushes you a bit further along the way, get your energy up, yeah? So good. All right, what's the danger of only having the vertical? Have a guess.
Uncritical thinking.
Sorry?
Uncritical thinking.
Uncritical, that does happen.
Non-thinking.
It does happen. You think the guru knows everything, who am I? Yeah, you can be uncritical. That is a real danger in Buddhism, isn't it? We've seen the casualties, yeah? Anything else? Yes?
Isn't it, my definition of friendship, equality is the basis, and if it's in a vertical relationship, it's kind of the illusion of equality while it isn't.
Right, so it's not so equal, but could there still be friendship? Could both of them be looking out for the other? Yes? Even though one's junior and one's senior, when one of them gets flu, the other one nurses him. Doesn't matter who. That to me, yeah? But you're right, friendship, is generally a horizontal thing, but this looking out for each other would be a quality of friendship for me. And I got a little distracted just making notes here. It's great, you learn so much Buddhism writing talks, it's fantastic, it's where my education comes from. But I went on Wikipedia and I just had this idea, I looked up the Sacred Band of Thieves. So the Thebans, they were in the middle of Greece in 400 BC, yeah? And they had an elite army of 300 men. They were really skilled in battle and, they were just the best athletes. But they were 150 gay couples. It was the Sacred Band of Thieves, all gay, all in pairs, and amazing fighters. Yeah, amazing, terrifying, because you didn't want to look bad in front of and they were all senior and junior couples, an older man, a younger man, and you wanted to honour your older friend or honour your younger friend, and they were scary. But I just love that idea that only 150 couples, but the Sacred Band of Thieves. So that to me would be an amazing sort of friendship, yeah? And an amazing army. Anyway, there you go. Good old Wikipedia.
But in Triratna, you don't have to be a couple with your...
You don't have to be a couple.
No.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Yeah. I have a girlfriend. Yeah. Yeah, but we're best mates. Yeah. Very good. So there we go. Yeah.
I just wanted to say as well that, I think you've already said it, but the sort of horizontal element of we just need a social... Well, we just need people who are on the path with you on a similar stage. Is something that is not, as you said, not so stressed.
Yeah.
But equally, I feel like the vertical element that we stress is also not so. The friendship aspect of the vertical relationship is also not so stressed. I think it's something that happens naturally, but as you said, there's always a strong kind of guru disciple kind of element.
I do agree with you, and I agree with you because I am a man.
Yeah.
And in many friendships, if one of our friends has an expertise, then we enter into a vertical relationship. He's a teacher. We're the pupil. And we men tend to have friendships around a certain topic.
That's true.
Where men are, where some are more experienced and knowledgeable. And it's very interesting that she has a perception of friendship that is the perception I get from my from women friends, that women have a far more holistic experience of friendship and experience of the relation. So I think we are caught in a very limited experience of friendship.
In the history of our movement, it was the women who discovered how to make groups of peers, And all the centres had the women produced many groups of peers where they could all come together and discuss. They'd have different groups for different subjects, And my girlfriend in Croydon, she was in 3 different women's groups in our movement, And what the men had to do was copy the women. We cheated. We pinched their idea, So we had some groups called Going for Refuge groups, And the women naturally produce these, the men don't, And the men have now copied these groups. So that's quite interesting. There is some differences. But
in some ways, the most important thing is just that I feel like in order to have a healthy friendship circle, there needed to be horizontal and vertical elements. I sort of started probably with a more horizontal outlook because, well, it's kind of the generation I come from. We kind of don't really look for friends that are sort of verticals. For me, it was kind of a revelation to just realize, there's people who are more experienced than I am. Well, first of all, I had to acknowledge that because I come from a very, egalitarian kind of background where everyone's just the same. We're not better than anyone else. But then also that I'm just friends with them. So I'm really enjoying my friendships with my teachers, really. The word teacher can sometimes feel very, top down or something. But the way I experience it is very kind of, it's very loving actually towards in both directions.
And Sangharakshita went to great efforts to point out that sometimes in a vertical relationship you change position. that sometimes the disciple would be more positive than, say, master. I don't mean master, but they could and change, from time to time. Something I did want to say though, if you just had the vertical, it can be a bit stressful, always on good behaviour. If you just have the horizontal, it can be a bit lax, So it's fantastic to have both. But I must say, here in Berlin, we don't really have the vertical very much, do we?
well, you might not, but I have you. So.
Come on. But there we go. But when you had our teacher alive, Sangharakshita, his mindfulness was astonishing, and you all become a bit more mindful with him around. A bit more careful with your speech and things like that. If you said something a bit wrong, he'd check, and what do you mean by that? Yeah. Bansi, and you'd have to explain it carefully. So that was, a vertical relationship. Good. Yeah. So that was just one bit on friendship. How are we for time? And I do remember talking to a senior order member, senior to me, years ago, and I was explaining to this senior order member that just because you're ordained doesn't mean you're more spiritually developed than somebody who's just walked in the door. This fellow was astonished to hear this, that you could have a newcomer walks through the door, they're more mindful, their meditation is better, and their ethics might be a bit better than the order member. So don't assume that ordination means you're spiritually developed. And this fellow did think that. Yeah. And in a way, what the ordination means is you have committed yourself to an ideal. You've made a big decision. Yeah, that's the difference. Not how spiritually developed you are, but you have decided to go in a certain direction. And it could take some years to make this decision. And I love Oscar Wilde. I like quoting him when they say, well, what's the difference between order members and others? I said, well, Oscar Wilde, I love him for many of his things. He said, we're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. I really like that. We're all down here, but some are going, So that's very good. So maybe that's enough because of time, but it does come out again and again. There's a sutta called the Meghiya Sutta where the Buddha just recommends to this young man. The young man wants to go off and meditate, and he goes off and does it on his own and has the most terrible time. It's awful. He's full of ill will and everything. He comes back, and the Buddha doesn't say, told you so. He doesn't, which is very good. But he says what he should do. And he says, join the community. When you're with senior monks, they will explain things to you. The environment is better. They'll encourage you. And I remember, when I came along, I was about 23, and these fellas, some of them had been alive in World War II. Their world experience, their humour was what got me. They were so funny, and and I really adored that. I really did. A totally different sort of humour, They've been through deprivations and everything. And one of them, he who I did think well of, he had trained as a priest when he was a young man. I think he got thrown out of the seminary, Seminary, never got ordained. He went to America, became a croupier in Las Vegas, and then he became a Trappist monk, and then he became a painter and decorator, and then he found us, and he's still a member of the order. He's in his 80s now, but these fellas, it was just amazing to be with them. What they'd seen, their breadth, of the world as well as their own practice. Good. What's the next one? I'm just straight to you. I can't remember. Fifth.
It's not arts yet, is it?
Not yet.
Work. Coming back to Protestantism.
Yes.
No.
What's the Zen thing? A day without work is a day without food? Have you heard that?
Isn't that a Protestant? No.
No, it's Zen.
Okay.
A day without work is a day without food. All right, okay.
Sorry.
You're the expert on Zen. No.
Not on Zen. Anyway.
Right.
Well, work is work. Well, I think what we realize is that it's not just literal practice, which is an environment for development, right? So not just on so practice in Buddhism doesn't just happen on the cushion; it actually happens in action as well. So work, you could say, in action, right? So how you work with others, how you go about your daily life is an environment for practice, is an opportunity to practice.
It could be 50 hours a week, couldn't it?
Could be, or longer, or less. So, you've been working so we used to set up these so-called team-based right livelihoods, which are basically kind of businesses for Buddhists to work together and to do something meaningful together, but work quite a lot. I mean, it's not just meditation or just study or something, or just puja. It's all these things together. You do that on the cushion, and then you bring it into your life. So this is one of these emphases that we have, is that we don't just we don't just meditate, but we meditate so that we can bring then those qualities into our lives, right? Work is just, most of us work most of our lives.
So, the first 11 years of my involvement in this movement, I was in restaurants and building company, all with Buddhists, and it's a hell of a practice. You're living together, you're working together, Some of them are sleeping together, anyway. But, good old FWBO. But that is intense. It's really intense. And Sangharakshita, somebody said to him, isn't that a bit intense, Bhante? We call him Bhante Sangharakshita. He said, that's what you want. You want intensity. If you want to get anywhere in life, And it was hard work, but my goodness, we had fun and we were very successful. Our restaurant, we ended up in the Good Food Guide, all these, the Channel 4 came down to film us, we were in the Evening Standard, it was a very, very, very good restaurant with celebrities visiting and things like that. And we were very proud of it, and we could work, we really could work. But what was also interesting was, in Buddhism, it's too detailed really, but in meditation there's 5 hindrances come up. 5 things come up to spoil your meditation, You get ill will, you get sleepy, you get distracted, you get doubt, blah, 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 yeah? They all come up at work, except everybody can see them. In meditation we can't see them, but at work. And it gets pointed out, and you're sort of types, So it's a very intensive affair. And so we had food shops, we had restaurants, we had one big company, Windhorse Trading, and they had a warehouse, and they supplied shops all around the country. We had little Windhorse shops. There was one in Dublin, I remember, and
running a Buddhist center like this one.
Yeah, a Buddhist center could be like Right Livelihood. Yeah.
Well, at least I work here full time. We have a center team that runs together. I mean, we have those kind of meetings, and it's like you say, it's kind of, sometimes Bhante called the work is the tantric guru, so it's kind of, if you want to have a guru, you just have to work with other people, and that tells you everything that you need to know about where your working grounds are. Because I get terribly frustrated with everyone sometimes, because I come up against my own expectations and ways I want to be the center.
And your colleagues mirror you back, don't they? They mirror you back. It is tough. It is tough.
Yeah. But also inspiring.
Yeah. And just to say, historically, though this is nearly gone now, Sangharakshita's ideal was a cooperative. He called it team-based right livelihood cooperative, where he wanted no leader in the company, where everybody was responsible, and you'd have meetings, and you were, that was his ideal. It didn't work. It really didn't work. You would end up with this 26 of you in this meeting, 4 of them are doing all the talking, 10 going, when's it going to end? I don't want to be here. And in the end, we broke up and had management structure. It was a lovely ideal, but we kept and we based our right livelihood very much on the needs of a monk or a nun. Yeah? So what does a monk or nun need? They need clothing. So we had some sort of, clothing shops. That still exists in East London, yeah? Housing. I was in building companies. It's a need. Food, of course. We had food shops. We had restaurants. What else? Those are the main ones. What does a monk need?
Yeah, basic needs.
Basic needs. But also, we had medical projects in India. That's a need. Things like that. So, but it's ethical work. Ethical work, and as a team, and the team is amazing. Yeah. I'm going to be critical. One of the tragedies of all of this is, imagine all of us want to come together to set up a project, yeah? We've all got such different skills. There'll be some people here who are brilliant accountants, some are lawyers, some are actors, some are all these different skills. And in a way, we can't use them all. We have to find the lowest common denominator. So you all end up in a restaurant. Yeah? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or you all end up in a warehouse, which is a bit sad.
Yeah.
And and our restaurant, we really made money. We bought a big retreat centre, we supported an orphanage in Kalimpong, we supported the central office, we did all these things. But I then discovered that two of the fellas who came in to eat in our restaurant, who later got ordained, these two fellas combined, their wages were the same as 35 of us working in Right Livelihood. These two guys could earn the same as 35 of us. So you don't make big money in it, really, you know. But that's the darker side.
Yeah.
But the other side is it can be hilarious. It can be so funny. It can be just amazing, you know. Yeah. And when you're young, you sort of need work, really. Yeah. Otherwise, you go out.
Be activated.
Yeah. Do bad things in the street.
It activates the energies, definitely. Yeah. Usually because those are passion projects. They're not just like jobs or something.
Yeah. You've got ideals there. Yeah. So that was that. They've not done so well. Right Livelihood was very much a young people's thing, and our movement's got older. You know, we like comfortable beds. You know, we don't like sleeping on floors or the floors of buses anymore. You know, those days are gone. Like to get home, wake up in your own bed and have a nice breakfast. Yeah. But yeah. But we'll see what comes. Yeah, fantastic. Good. All right. Yeah.
The time for the arts. We only have.
The arts. Yeah, we only got 5. The arts, please. Would you like to?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what you asked.
Yeah.
So this might be a surprising one. The arts. So it's the importance of the arts. So the arts are important for Triratna because, well, first of all, in traditional Buddhism, you get all these kind of texts that says, you know, monks shouldn't enjoy music, shouldn't enjoy dances, shouldn't all these kind of things.
Yeah.
So this is actually sometimes Triratna gets criticized for the emphasis on the arts by other Buddhist movements, but I think what the principle behind not enjoying dances and all that is a kind of sort of numbing distraction, right? I think that's the principle behind it, because back in the day, dances and singing weren't ballets, you know, they were kind of folk dances and kind of destructive, but for monks at least, probably really nice. I probably would enjoy them, but anyway. So Sangharakshita was really keen on that because he wrote quite a few articles on that called "The Religion of Art" or "The Meaning of Buddhism or Religion and the Arts." And he says that he feels like art and religion in their aim overlap here. They overlap in their aim in what they're trying to do. There's an overlap between art and religion, and especially with Buddhism and the arts, because he says, well, what he finds out, what he figured out is that what art is trying to do, what Buddhism is trying to do, is an expansion of consciousness. And he says that so arts, or the enjoyment of art, and there could be paintings, there could be music, there could be poetry, there could be, you know, ballet, whatever. There could be all sorts of different forms of art, really. And he says, well, ideally, or good art is doing that. It's trying to expand your consciousness. It's trying to give you an experience that takes you out of your normal sort of narrow-minded day-to-day life. It's trying to provide a sense of beauty and aesthetics. Yeah. And you will realize the more you meditate, that's exactly what you're trying to do in meditation as well. You're trying to contact a sense of beauty, a sense of aesthetic, a sense of kind of innocent enjoyment almost that comes with enjoying, well, in my case, it's mainly music. I've gotten into paintings a bit, but my background is more classical music. So he's saying, well, you know, any kind of art either kind of expands the consciousness horizontally or vertically. So here again we have those two words. And horizontally he's kind of saying, well, imagine like a play, like a good play, like a good drama or something. It might not lift your consciousness to higher states of minds, but it definitely broadens your general awareness of what other people's could be like. You start to empathize. You start to learn how to see the world through other people's views, in seeing a good play, and seeing all those different relationships and emotions play out with each other. So you learn how to be human, through enjoying art like that. And then the vertical element would be if you enjoy art that comes out of a higher state of, when the artist was in a higher state of consciousness himself. Like a good Beethoven symphony or something. Or like Bach, for example. You could really see he must have been in an amazing state while he was writing it. So through the music or painting or whatever, you actually learn to enjoy this sort of higher sense of consciousness yourself. That kind of that same consciousness transmits into your own consciousness. So it's an indirect way. It's to get a taste of what we're trying to do in meditation, what we're trying to do in ethics as well. Ethics is actually it has an aesthetic dimension, which is anyway for another talk. But so this is why he felt art is actually really, really important. Also because most art actually has a religious background. So at least in Europe, the most art actually comes out of trying to convey a religious experience. So this is why he felt like art and religion have quite a lot in common, because they all mostly seem to ask similar questions, like, well, what is meaningful, what is valuable, what is beautiful, what is, what's the human condition like? Those are kind of similar questions that art's trying to explore, and religion is trying to explore as well. So it's sort of what we call an indirect method of practice, like yoga, or like kind of where we're not like directly working on our mind, but you're using sort of helpful tools to. Last Saturday I went to a concert because I'm under 30, so I can get there for really cheap. And the more I do that, and the more I've been meditating now, it's just like the effect that music has on me gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So there was this one particular moment where, and that happens to me more and more frequently, where I just kind of get completely knocked out by the music. Like I just can't. I'm not aware of myself anymore. I just sort of really get absorbed in the music, but it needs a bit of work. Like it's not saying that, oh yeah, just go to the opera and then you'll have an amazing experience. I had to work myself into this sort of language. It's not so usual for us anymore to enjoy these kind of things. Art is something to be learned in a way, like meditation is. We need to actually learn. It's usually helpful if you go with someone who can explain it to you as well. But once you get there, a whole new world opens up for you. A whole new world of perception, of beauty, of aesthetics. You come out of the concert hall, and the whole perception has changed. You have quite a strong experience. Yeah. You get other operas, for example, which is more the horizontal bit. Like I've had not heightened experiences, but like I remember watching Madame Butterfly by Puccini. That's an opera that's very miserable. That's basically just misery in 3 hours. And in the end, she kills herself over her lover. But it was lovely. I wasn't in heightened consciousness, but I definitely had a cathartic element because I had a bit of what's Liebeskummer in English?
Say it again.
Liebeskummer.
Oh, was it lovers? What? No.
Like when you're heartbroken.
Yeah.
So that was nice. She killed herself for me.
Catharsis as well.
Yes, it was catharsis. Yeah.
I remember we all watched a Russian King Lear, and at the end of King Lear, they're all dead. You just see all the bodies being brought through, and everybody came out of the cinema silent.
Yeah.
But it was a totally cathartic experience. Sorry, Lily, you had a point. You had your hand raised.
I just had a random comment because I find music amazing too. Like being in Berlin, I just enjoy techno so much here. Very cool culture and all. And to me, I don't know, but sometimes I hear some sounds that I feel like someone is scratching my belly from the inside. It's really nice feelings in my tummy. I don't know if it's something similar.
It's interesting.
Like I'm directed towards. Like,
It's just something to explore, really. Like it's for me, it's kind of an open-ended journey as well. You just start to explore these things and see where they lead to you.
I have a guest next Tuesday, and I said, let's meet at the Neues Museum. I said, come and see, I use the English words, Nefertiti and Akhenaten, these old lovers from 3,500 years ago. I said, to me, it's like going to church in the best sense, the absolute best sense. I always come away from these two in a higher state of consciousness, always. It's just, and Berlin has got such an amazing collection of these people, so beautifully spaced out, you know. We're so lucky in Berlin, 70 museums, and there we go. But yeah,
well, it's the art.
it's lovely.
It's time, isn't
It's time.
it?
Over time.
Over time. Okay.
I think that worked. It was quite good, wasn't it? You know, and we didn't fight over the space.
Yes. As we usually do.
We usually did. I totally disagree. No, but so it was our little experiment just to see if that would work, and it seems pretty good. And there's quite a lot of stuff there. That's why I like to have a recording, and I'll bang it up on YouTube in case people want to come back and have a look at it. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. At my age,